What is going on, Coaching Collective? Welcome back to call number 16. Hope you guys are doing well. Wait, can you guys see my screen? Everybody can see my screen? Okay, cool. So welcome back. Today's call is going to be on adrenal fatigue. Adrenal fatigue is not necessarily considered a diagnosis in modern medicine. You'll see this as hypoadrenia or adrenal dysfunction or things like that. I call it adrenal fatigue because your adrenals are quite literally fatiguing. So let's go ahead and dive into this. For anybody who just hopped on here, if you guys can turn your videos on for me so I can teach to faces, it does help me a lot. So what's the purpose of the adrenals? The adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands help the body cope with stress and survive. Super important. They're probably two of the most important glands in your entire body. They're known as the glands of stress, and it's their job to enable the body to deal with all types of stress, injury, work relationship problems, disease, etc. Let me re-say that. It is their job to enable the body to deal with all types of stress. Your life literally depends on the proper functioning of your adrenal glands. So they are super important, and the adrenals are something that I think is so underlooked from an overall health and stress management standpoint. Now, does anybody know where the adrenals sit in your body? Can somebody tell me where the adrenal glands are? Where do they sit above? No one? All right, we'll get to it. Adrenal glands. The adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. Does everybody know where your kidneys are? Right in here. That's right. So every cell responds according to what the adrenals signal, whether they signal attack, retreat, or surrender. So what's an example of this? Flight or flight response. When you're feeling scared, the adrenals send a signal, and every single cell in your body has the same function: get the fuck away or attack. They quite literally will run the entire ship. The effects of your body's own adrenal hormones on your overall health and body functions are even more varied, profound, and extensive than steroid injection treatments like hydrocortisone. So the adrenal hormones, they affect everything in such a multifactorial realm. Like the adrenals are honestly fucking fascinating. Like they are such a fascinating concept in the human body. And this result, or this presentation, is just on adrenal fatigue and how it looks and how to treat it. But I would encourage you guys to do your own deep dive research on the actual adrenal glands and more of their functions, because it is super interesting. Hypoadrenia. This is something to write down, because this is basically what adrenal fatigue is hypoadrenia. It's a deficiency in the functioning of the adrenal glands, aka adrenal fatigue. This is what you'll see diagnosed more than others. Realistically, it's adrenal fatigue. Adrenal fatigue, at least in my experience, is not accepted as a diagnosis in modern medicine. It's not a distinct symptom. So doctors will go, well, you're not experiencing, you don't have a symptom of adrenal fatigue, so therefore adrenal fatigue is not a real thing. But, and we'll kind of, this is my last note here, the normal range of adrenal function is large. So let's just say on a scale, your adrenal function can range anywhere from here. And if your adrenal functioning is all the way over here, but then it drops all the way down to here and it's still in that range, the doctors aren't going to flag it. They're going to go, well, it's still normal. But if your adrenal function is operating at half of its capacity, there's clearly there's something very off if we're experiencing that. So just because something is in range doesn't mean that it's functioning optimally, especially if it was at the higher performance range and now it's at the lower performance range. Does that make sense for everybody? Yeah, cool. Other conditions related to adrenal fatigue. So now we're just going to kind of start getting into conditions, symptoms, side effects, anything in between that's going to relate of what we can look at of a client if their adrenals are functioning poorly. Erratic or abnormal blood sugar levels in the form of hypoglycemia. So we'll talk about this later in the presentation, but typically when we have adrenal fatigue, they're going to be hypoglycemic or hyperglycemic and have very abnormal blood sugar. It's going to be down, it's going to be crashed, it's going to be everything in between. So dietary protocols do need to be a little bit different when we're dealing with somebody who has adrenal fatigue. They have a higher tendency to experience allergies, arthritic pain, and a decreased immune response. So if you have a client who's constantly having allergic reactions to everything, or they're constantly getting sick, we can pretty much guarantee that they're higher stress and their adrenals are not functioning at full capacity, which is why they're experiencing this in the first place. Insomnia, increased fears, anxiety, and depression, intervals of confusion, difficulties concentrating, a less acute memory recall. Remember, your adrenal fatigues function so many different ways. So if they're not functioning, you're going to suffer in functions so many different ways. I see a lot of people writing down, so I'm going to give it a second for you guys to write them down. To be completely honest, I wrote a lot of shit for this slide. It's like 28 slides long. I'm going to try to get through it in about an hour. You guys are probably not going to be able to write everything down. You're probably going to have to come back and watch it later on just to write out other things. So anyways, what causes adrenal fatigue? Stress, period. That's it. But stress is multifactorial, just like everything. Your adrenals respond to every form of stress, no matter what. This is any life stressor. Now, we've talked about this on other calls. Your body doesn't know the difference between stress responses. It doesn't know if you're in a breakup, in a car accident, being chased down the street by a tiger, being robbed at gunpoint. It responds the exact same. Your adrenals still send that signal to every single cell in your body. So these are just some of the examples that I put on there: intense activity, emotional stress, pressure at work, a shitty diet, everything in between. Any questions on that? If the small stressors occur simultaneously, accumulate, or become chronic, giving the adrenals no time to recover in between events, it usually results in adrenal fatigue. So who can give me, and I'm going to wait until somebody gives me this, who can give me an example of like small stressors in the day-to-day life that could happen over and over and over and over again, where the adrenals don't get a break and somebody just continues to stress themselves out and then it turns into a real issue?
Not getting enough sleep.
Okay, that's a great one. Yeah, that'll compound. Somebody else.
A bad living situation or environment.
Yes, 100%. A bad living situation. Let's do one more.
Dealing with like clients or customers, or like if you work in retail, I guess.
Yeah, dude, stressful or dickhead customers that are happening every single day, 100%. So it's like these little life things. Like if you and your partner are always fighting every night and it gets to a point where you're crying and you do that every single day over and over and over again, you get emotionally drained. You're constantly in a fight or flight. Your body's constantly in a higher stress state. So they seem small, but I'm sure you guys have clients that go, oh, I was fighting with my boyfriend last night again. Oh, I was fighting with my boyfriend again last night, or my girlfriend. And over time, those stressful events stack up. Your adrenal glands just keep getting pushed further and further and further and further down, and they don't recover. And then we have hypoadrenia. So the other side of this is people on alternating sleep schedules with less than 3 weeks between shifts. That's supposed to say shifts, not shits. The body needs about 3 weeks to adapt to a new circadian rhythm produced by each sleep change. We've talked about this in the other circadian rhythm video. That's really funny that I said that. But anyways, so Syndrome X, this is something that I would write down. Okay. Syndrome X is one of the most common, or the more common diagnoses around higher stress or adrenal dysfunction. A complex of signs and symptoms that include glucose intolerance, increased triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, which, you know, we can see high LDL here, which is why high LDL on blood work can be a sign of stress. Insulin resistance, hypertension, central obesity, and accelerated atherosclerosis. These disorders reflect the effects of stress that produce elevated cortisol levels. So this is not even an all-inclusive list on the diseases and disorders that can happen from high cortisol levels, but this is what the definition of Syndrome X is. And this is basically what they'll diagnose someone if they see them with very high elevated cortisol levels. So if you hear a client going, my doctor said I have Syndrome X, this is what it is. Give you guys another second to write these all down. All right, moving on. Lifestyle variables that can lead to adrenal fatigue. Also, shout out to Kylie for wearing the Impact hoodie. What's good? That's the OG Impact shirt right there. 10 points to Gryffindor. So lifestyle variables that can lead to adrenal fatigue. Lack of sleep, poor food choices, using food and drinks as stimulants when tired. Remember, when your body's tired, there's a reason. And we'll get more into that later, so I'm not going to touch on that too much. Staying up late, even though you're fatigued, convincing yourself, well, I got to get this done. Being in a constant position of powerlessness. We talked about this in the stress mitigation video. This is one of the number one psychological causes of increased cortisol levels, is feeling powerless. Constantly overdriving yourself, that mental try to be perfect, going at life from a perfectionist lifestyle or perfectionist mindset, huge stressor. Staying in double binds, basically no-win situations, which I guess could also be powerlessness. And then lack of enjoyable and rejuvenating activities. I'm sure you guys have had this with a lot of clients. You're like, dude, you need to go do something that like makes you have fun. You need to go let off some steam, go dance. I'm a huge fan on like body embodiment or just embodiment practices, but that's also at a later slide. So I'm not going to touch on that too much now. Going into a couple of these. Poor diet reduces your adrenal's ability to respond to stress. Remember, these things operate on a cellular level, so we need to be fueling our body on a cellular level. A lot of this can be referenced back to the general health and well-being call that we did. Respiratory infections commonly precede adrenal fatigue, so they are going to be a correlation there. Children, this is super interesting. Children born to mothers already suffering from adrenal fatigue and children who experience extreme stress in the womb typically have a lower adrenal function like their whole life. So from birth, they have less capacity to deal with stress and are more prone to adrenal fatigue in their lives. Fucking crazy, right? That's fucking crazy. That's why when you see a pregnant woman, you need to go give her a hug and let her know that she's doing great, because we do not want that stress raising, because it can literally pass on to that kid and that kid's fucked. If you guys like met somebody who's just like, you're like, dude, how are you so emotionally reactive to everything? Like you can't handle stress well at all. I'm sure everybody here knows somebody like that, right? Well, we can kind of see the possibilities of why that is now with this. Other signs and symptoms. If they have a really hard time waking up first thing in the morning, more than likely on labs, you're going to see cortisol 2 tanked because it's bottomed out. Because remember, we need cortisol in the morning to wake us up. Continuing fatigue not relieved by sleep, craving for salt or salty foods, lethargic throughout their entire day, just feeling like it's a lot more of a task to do the little things in life, a decreased sex drive, and a decreased ability to handle stress. Any questions on those? Cool. Signs and symptoms continued, because there's a lot of them. Increased time to recover from illness, injury, or trauma. So when your adrenals are not functioning properly, your body will quite literally take longer to heal. And like we can use a cut as an example of this. You know, like if you get cut and you're like, man, it's been like 2 weeks and that thing's still not healed, usually there's adrenal dysfunction happening, because they quite literally have an ability for you to heal. That's why typically I have a couple of clients in here who have gotten breast augmentations. And when you do that, I almost always put adrenal health from New Ethics in there, because we want to support the adrenal function to help with the recovery process from any surgeries or anything like that. So lightheaded when you're standing up too quickly, mild depression, less enjoyment or happiness with life. And then if symptoms increase, if the meals are stopped and pushed back. So let's just say they get very emotionally reactive, and then if they miss a meal, it's like all hell breaks loose. So like the symptoms are being exacerbated by not eating. Thoughts are less focused and more fuzzy, less accurate memory, and then just less tolerance in general throughout the day. Like think about somebody who has like a short fuse. Actually, before I go on to that, anybody want to write? Oh, anybody have any questions on those? Are all the signs and symptoms that I have written down here. So anybody have any questions on those? Cool.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you said like missing a meal, do you mean just like stressing over them missing the meal, or just from just not eating, like being hangry, I guess?
No, so the symptoms are going to increase if meals are stopped or pushed back. So if they're experiencing any of these the heck? If they're experiencing any of these symptoms at all and they miss a meal and then those symptoms increase, that's a sign of adrenal fatigue.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So how do we test for adrenal fatigue? So there's 3 different types of testing for hormones. Saliva testing is the most accurate as it tests the hormone levels that are actually inside the cell. Blood testing tests hormone levels. Blood testing tests hormone levels outside of the cell, and then urine testing tests the spillover of hormones out of the blood and into the urine. So when it comes to testing the adrenals or cortisol levels, if I want the absolute most accurate rating, I'm going to go a 4-point saliva test every time. Morning, mid-afternoon, mid-evening, and then nighttime is usually when that's going to happen. So it's important to note that if you have a client who's using like a transdermal hormone cream, those are transported through the lymph into the cells rather than the blood. So they're not going to be accurately reflected in saliva or blood tests. So if you have somebody who's doing like a testosterone cream or a progesterone cream, that's not going to be accurately tested if we take blood tests. Does that make sense? It's pretty straightforward. I'm sure that makes sense. Now,
Wait, quick question. So what's the test? Like, what's the test itself? Are you able to acquire it, or do you need to like have them go take it somewhere?
Well, they're going to need to go to a clinic and take it. Yeah. So
Okay, you can't just like buy one.
No, it's like, yeah, you would have to take a 4-point saliva test and send it in for them to test your cortisol throughout the day.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So that's pretty much the symptoms. That's what we would look at to be able to see what somebody's experiencing, what's going on, for us to know if they have adrenal fatigue or if they're experiencing those symptoms. We can get them tested, and then from here we'll be able to see for sure, okay, this person definitely has a downregulated adrenal function. So now we're going to dive into the lifestyle changes, the food changes, the drink changes, the supplementation things to help fix adrenal fatigue. And I'll be honest, probably a large amount of your clients are suffering from adrenal fatigue in some way, shape, or form, just because of how this life is and how the society and the culture is. It's very fast paced. It's very stressful across the board. So belly breathing is just a practice that I think that all people should embody, which is breathing into your belly instead of your chest, because this allows the air of your lungs where there's rich blood supply, and it triggers the relaxation response within a few minutes. We call this taking control of your nervous system, and having your clients use a balloon for a breathing exercise is very, very lucrative here, just for them to understand how to breathe fully from and into their belly. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, or I guess majority of people, just chest breathe right up here. And you can see it when people are sitting there. So we want to be able to relearn, and even ourselves teach them how to breathe into their belly. That is so huge for triggering the relaxation response on a cellular level. And this kind of pairs with that, which is slowing down your breathing. Because anytime you're tense and upright, the breathing is usually very fast paced, right? It's very short and shallow. So it's more beneficial to focus on slowing down your exhale rather than your inhale. So that's what I always tell people. You can breathe in, but when you let it out, we want to just take a little bit more time and relax there. The other big lifestyle change is taking more vacations. Yes, this is super, super important. Every single one of you on this call is an entrepreneur, is a business owner, and this shit's fucking stressful, dude. Like, you can't control anything. Like, you can't control every single one of your clients or your entire business just being like, nope, we're done, right? Like, there's always that constant, like, we have to keep grinding, we have to keep going. And that can be very, very stressful. And that can make you to make yourself take a back burner, which makes your performance take a back burner. The more you work, in my opinion, the more vacations you need to keep up that level of work. And these don't have to be 1-2 week long vacations. They can be a weekend vacation where you don't take your phone, you don't take your laptop, and you actually just de-stress, blow off some steam, and come back refreshed. A lot of people think that taking vacations is like a lazy thing to do. Truly, I think if you're actually operating at a high level, like you literally need them. So my permission to you guys to take more vacations. Moving on, sleep. Crazy, right? Sleep is crucial for adrenal recovery, but the paradox is that sleeplessness is sometimes one of the symptoms of adrenal fatigue. So if you have a hard time going to sleep, the adrenals are probably not functioning properly. And it's really important that we try to be in bed before 10:30. I always say in bed, ready to go by 10:30, because you typically get a second wind around 11 p.m. And if we ride that from 11 into the early morning, 1 to 2 a.m., it's going to further exhaust your adrenals, even though they may feel more energized, or your clients may feel more energized during that time than they've felt all day. It's called a second wind for a reason. So it's important that we make sure that they're in bed before that happens. Otherwise, you convince yourself, I feel great right now. I'm going to get all this work done. I'm going to knock this out. Why not? We don't want to do that. It's just going to further push those adrenals down. And the further they get pushed down, the harder it is for us to get them back up. This one's fun. Try to schedule horizontal rests during the day. During particular times when the athlete feels more fatigued, I recommend trying to schedule like literally 15 to 30 minutes of them just lying down. Like, you don't have to stop working. You don't have to take a nap. Literally just go on your couch and lay down, because lying down is significantly more restorative than sitting for a person with adrenal fatigue. It's relaxing your full body. And while they're laying down, they can embody some belly breathing and slow down their breathing. Our goal is to just constantly reinforce relaxation and restoration throughout the day. Everybody can lay down for 15, 30 minutes. Make sense? Cool. Lifestyle continued. Exercise. And believe it or not, like, yes, rapid breathing from exercise, it'll actually expel volatile gases out of the body that become harmful if they build up. Now, this is obviously different than the anxiety, stress, frantic breathing. This is an actual fatigue breathing that's blowing out that harmful gas or that volatile gas. It also increases blood flow, and it helps keep plaque from building up in your arteries while stimulating your liver to perform its many functions more effectively. So exercise, and just a fun note, your liver has literally over 3,000 functions that it does, but exercising is actually huge here. But, well, actually, that's my third note. So hang on. So exercise normalizes levels of cortisol, insulin, blood glucose, growth hormone, thyroid, and it puts more oxygen in the brain. It also decreases depression from the, who's got it? Why does it decrease depression? Come on. What do you release when you exercise?
Endorphins.
Yes, my God. Endorphins. So when it comes to somebody who has adrenal fatigue and we want them to exercise more, I prefer embodiment exercises here. Yoga, dancing, swimming, Tai Chi, things like that. I don't want them going balls to the wall into the gym and training like a super hardcore, intense bodybuilder, because we're trying to lower levels of stress. Yoga, dancing, swimming, those are very low impact. It allows you to move how the body wants to move and get a lot of energy out and just kind of like, again, embody yourself, be more present, and they're lowering a lot more stress than anything else. So now we're going to go to food changes, things to tweak in your client's diet to help with them with adrenal fatigue. So remember, this whole thing, in my opinion, adrenal fatigue is a lifestyle living that causes them to get there. So in order for us to recover them from there and make sure they don't get it back, it just needs to be a lifestyle change. They need to just live a better lifestyle. So it's very important that athletes with hypoadrenia eat before 10 a.m. You need to replenish the glycogen supply after the precious night's energy requirements. That's supposed to say previous, not precious. The previous, I just really did some typos in this one. My goodness. After the previous night's energy requirements, between 6 and 8 a.m., cortisol is rising rapidly, and this can cause an aversion to food because appetite's going to be blunted. So if you get people who wake up in the morning like, oh, I'm just not really hungry when I wake up, well, it's because cortisol is high and therefore stress is high. Also, low liver function that is usually correlated to low adrenal function suppresses your hunger in the morning. So it's kind of like a interesting cycle here. If the liver is congested, the athlete's probably going to feel a big wall towards food in the morning, like just like, oh, I hate eating first thing in the morning. Well, the way that we actually combat that is by eating in the morning. So it's a bit of a forced approach at first, but it's super important for us to be eating before 10 a.m. Okay. Questions on that? I hope not, because that's all I wrote. Cool. Moving on. More food changes. So we're definitely going to want to avoid sugar and white flour products. Now, I'm not going to, hang on, my whistle's a little chapped. So I'm not going to sit here and have this, like, sure, I'm not an advocate for sugar or flours or any of that processed shit, but I'm not going to sit here and say that a client eating them is going to have terrible health either. This is specifically for a client who has adrenal fatigue, because when you have adrenal fatigue, you also have hypoglycemia, which is a deficiency of glucose in the bloodstream. And foods made from refined flour and or sugar quickly raise the blood sugar, which causes excess insulin to be released in response. And then this causes blood sugar levels to crash, which leads to the hypoglycemia symptoms and then even more cravings, which makes things worse. Side note, because a lot of people crave chocolate, especially on their periods, a craving for chocolate more oftentimes than not is actually just your body craving magnesium, because chocolate contains a ton of magnesium, and magnesium helps mediate the symptoms of PMS because it's intimately involved, like crucial in the production of progesterone. So low magnesium can cause low progesterone, which will cause more aggressive PMS symptoms. And this is why, if you guys remember the birth control video, we talked about people coming off of birth control and us hitting them with Metapure to replenish the magnesium and the B vitamins that are depleted from birth control. So if we're depleting magnesium, well, the production of progesterone is also blunted, which is why we usually see progesterone tanked with birth control. Moving on.
Do you have a specific magnesium derivative that you prefer, like citrate, anything like that?
Yeah, actually, we're going to go over that in the supplement section, but actually magnesium citrate is the preferred one here to help with adrenal fatigue. But we'll go over that in the, good question. We're going to go over that in the supplement section though. Cool. Wait a minute. Oh, way back here. Yeah, okay. So food changes continued. We really want them. This one, I think, as a general response, is that we want to avoid hydrogenated and partially hydrogenated oils, because they've been chemically altered to have certain properties that have nothing to do with our health, which means they're not good for our health. Think like things that are made to stay solid at room temperature that should not be solid at room temperature. Like there's a reason it's a solid at room temperature. Like if you buy those 7-Up cakes and they're like literally in the middle of the freaking grocery store and you take them in the car and you take them home and they're the exact same, that's probably a red flag to not eat that thing. You know what I mean? So these oils actually disrupt the normal fatty acid metabolism in your body. They use up the enzymes that normally would be utilized by the good oils and prevent your body from creating quality cell membranes and nerve sheaths. So like this shit just fucks you up. It just fucks you up across the board. We want to avoid deep fried foods, fast foods, junk foods. That one's very self-explanatory. And then avoiding foods that the client or you are sensitive to or that are going to cause an inflammatory response. Duh. We should be doing that anyways. But any questions on this? Just don't eat shit food, basically, is what we can break this down to. Eating properly. Literally eating properly. And I'm interested to see how many of you are like, damn, I don't really do that when I eat, because it's an interesting one. So preparing your body for the complex process of digestion, absorption, and the utilization of energy and nutrients. If we can control the eating environment, let's do it. And what I mean by that is finding a peaceful spot to eat, headphones or photos or your laptop or like something that you can watch to change the environment that you're in. Dude, what am I doing with these typos? Oh my goodness. Anyways, play music or other relaxing sounds while they eat. Eating with friends is a good idea because it promotes relaxation and digestion. rushing through meals while focusing on work or time or eating in company that makes you feel tense is actually bad for your health. It's pretty wild, right? So I don't prefer you eat standing up. I don't want you to eat during, like, you guys all have clients. So like, oh, fuck, let me just eat real quick in between check-ins. No, we need to make eating, like, eating should be almost like a ritual would be the best way that I say this, to make sure that your body is actually prepared to absorb the food in a non-stressful way. Eat your food sitting down, not running, walking, driving. Before you eat, take a moment to calm yourself and calm your nervous system. And we'll go more into this here. If I have a client suffering from adrenal fatigue, I do the 3 breath rule before meals. 3 deep diaphragmatic breaths before we eat, 2 counts in, 2 counts hold, and then 4 counts out. And I'll have them do that 3 times before they eat. This will help the body relax. And a fun nugget of information for you guys: holding your breath for 10 to 20 seconds is actually a good way for your body to begin to relax. So just controlling that diaphragm. Here's one that nobody does: chew your food thoroughly. I will say 95% of your clientele and my clientele wolf their food down, like inhale. And you probably hear slurping sounds, right? People eat really fucking fast. People don't chew. There's a bunch of animals out there, really. It's a circus out there with these things. But chewing your food well makes a surprisingly significant difference to good digestion. Yes, I literally researched chews for this. 30 chews per mouthful is like what we should be aiming for before we swallow. Now, if they have digestive upset from eating their meal, I would probably recommend they go to 60 chews per mouthful. If you have diabetic clients or clients who have chronic digestive problems, literally making them have 100 chews per mouthful, because the more thorough the chewing, the more completely the food particles are moved with saliva and enzymes that aid in digestion. So chewing your food makes a really, really big difference. And I would argue a lot of your clients who have digestive issues, you go, well, anytime you have a mouthful of food now, I want you to count 100 chews and then swallow. It's going to make them slow down a ton with their eating. And it's actually going to allow them to digest the meal properly. And I guarantee you the digestive issues are gone. And this is also going to help with adrenal fatigue because there's less stress. Things to drink that can help. Mostly teas, right? A couple other ones, barley tea, herbal tea, but green tea is one that I definitely prefer, especially if we have clients who need their caffeine fix or love their coffee in the morning. I prefer green tea over coffee because it also contains less caffeine, but it also contains higher amounts of antioxidants and other nutrients. And it's also been noted for anti-cancer and cancer protecting properties. Like, green tea is fucking amazing, really. So if you have somebody with adrenal fatigue, I actually don't even think I put this in the presentation, but obviously we are going to want to lower caffeine and stimulants, right? And yeah, so barley teas, herbal teas. I'm sure you could Google other teas that can help support the adrenals. These are just the 3 that I knew off the top of my head. And then water, which is pretty obvious, but also a little different than what people think. And again, we talked about this in the health and well-being video, but people with low adrenals usually have specific problems with their internal water balance. And city water is such a huge problem. I'm sure there's a lot of cities where they go like, hey, don't drink the water, right? Does anybody here live in a city where they tell you like, hey, don't drink Arizona's like, literally do not drink this water. But everybody does it. So like, it's polluted garbage. And so this is a fun one. Drinking salt water just after you wake up can actually help you to function better in the early morning. And then adding another glass of salted water with a snack around 2 p.m. can lessen or even prevent the crashes we typically see with adrenal fatigue around later evening, like 3, 4, 5 p.m. I think it's a very overlooked variable for helping with adrenal fatigue. Because remember, one of the symptoms is a craving for salty foods or snacks because your body's having an imbalance inside of it. So adding 2 glasses of water with some salt added to it in the morning and around 2 p.m. can actually help significantly more than people think.
How much salt would you say like in a glass?
I don't really have like a measurement for it. I usually say like 4 to 6 clicks of sea salt. If they, just a couple cracks. I'm not a big like teaspoon measure guy, but I guess you would do like a quarter teaspoon. I think it ends up being like about 400, 500 milligrams of sodium. Yeah. Supplementation. Now, or does anybody have any questions on the water or the drinking thing? No. Cool. Okay, so now we're moving into supplementation. I do think that it's important to note that when it comes to the supplementation for adrenal fatigue, there's a decent amount of supplements here. You don't need to use every single one of them. You're really going to kind of like what I do is I kind of pick and choose based off of what the client's already taking, not taking, if what we're giving them is working or not working, and then going from there. But also this list is not all inclusive. These are just the ones that I've personally used. I'm sure there's a much larger array of them that you can research yourself. So we've talked about the vitamin C and the ascorbic acid one before. I think I was in the stress mitigation video, which led me to want to do this call on adrenal fatigue. So 500 milligrams of vitamin C as ascorbic acid with 250 milligrams of bioflavonoid. That's where you're going to start with hour 1. And then every hour on the hour, you're going to increase it by that same dosage. So you're going to add 500 and 250 to those totals every hour on the hour until the client's bowel movements become somewhat loose or runny. I would say the most common spot, you get about 2 to 4 grams of vitamin C for people with adrenal fatigue. But the more chronic and the more severe the fatigue, the more vitamin C is necessary. And I have seen people get up to like 16,000 milligrams of vitamin C with this. So there's not necessarily a cap that I say. We really base it off of what the stool's doing. And that's probably been my first line of attack for adrenal fatigue on top of all of the lifestyle changes and stuff. That's probably going to be my number one. Vitamin E, I don't think I didn't write the dosage here, but I believe the dosage for this is 800 milligrams a day. But I think it's important to note that I believe the vitamin E, for it to fully saturate and take full effect, I think it takes about 4 months in the system for us to start seeing benefits in the adrenal function, but I could be completely wrong on that. But vitamin E absorbs and neutralizes the damaging free radical molecules inside the adrenal glands and elsewhere. So it's getting rid of all the shit that's causing the adrenals to dysfunction. Vitamin E is a really great supplement, but when it comes to adrenal fatigue, we want a complete vitamin E complex. Make sure the vitamin E we're using is a mixed tocopherols. I'm just going to call them tocos. Supplements is what I call them. A mixed toco supplement with high beta tocos, not D alpha. So you're going to have beta and D alpha. Too much D alpha can actually suppress the beta and other tocos necessary for adrenal rejuvenation. So there's, again, just to re-say this, you want a vitamin E supplement that is higher with beta tocos, tocopherols, whatever you want to call it, not D alpha. Beta good, D alpha bad. Right? We want a mix of all of them, but higher beta, lower D alpha, because too much can suppress the beta, which is necessary for adrenal rejuvenation. B vitamins, pretty much across the board, are going to be helping with adrenal fatigue. And I didn't want to break down every single one of these because the fucking presentation was already so long, but the ability for you to dive into these is very, very easy with a couple internet searches to figure out what they do with the adrenals. But pantothenic acid, niacin, B6, B complex, B3, etc. Every single B vitamin actually plays a different role, but all of them work together to attack and help rejuvenate the adrenals. So B vitamin complexes are very, very important. I would say pantothenic acid and niacin are probably the 2 heavy hitters. but all the other ones are still going to support them. Again, you guys can look at each of those individually if you want to know a little bit more about them. I don't want to say I mean, I've used pantothenic acid for acne and stuff, but I don't think I've used it very many times for adrenal fatigue. I think majority of the time, if you do enough of the lifestyle changes and the food changes, you can get away with not using as much supplementation. Remember, supplementation is always that last force of like, now we'll use this. Minerals, magnesium. You know, we already talked about magnesium and why it was crucial, but I just want to talk about it again. So it's kind of like the spark plug for adrenals and the energy portion of every cell in your body. David, magnesium is like crucial. It's essential to produce the enzymes and the energy necessary for the adrenal hormone cascade. So quite literally, without magnesium, we don't have adrenal function. A lot of steps that creates energy in the adrenals are very dependent on magnesium. So it is a necessity for adrenal recovery. So we can also look at this. If birth control depletes magnesium, are people utilizing birth control potentially more susceptible to adrenal dysfunction? You tell me. I don't know. Makes sense. Now, 400 milligrams of magnesium citrate has been the recommended daily dose for the average person. And also to note, magnesium is best absorbed in the body after 8 p.m. So I always, if I'm going to have clients do magnesium citrate, it's also a great natural laxative. So just be warned with that one. But if I ever have athletes who are utilizing magnesium citrate, I do this dominantly for competitors on peak week who aren't able to go to the bathroom. We'll do magnesium sit before bed. Usually they're waking up and going to the bathroom. Like your clients aren't going to go like shit their pants or anything, but it's definitely going to help loosen up the bowels, which if they have adrenal fatigue can actually cause constipation or slight constipation. So we see how that can kind of help it out there. During times of stress, I would say always increase magnesium, vitamin C, and pantothenic acid. 9 times out of 10, or I'd say 10 times out of 10, these are just going to be there to help support your adrenals recover and rejuvenate so that they can keep pumping out more. Our goal would be to support them so that we don't get to that dysfunctional level and then have to go through this whole change and tender loving care process to build them back up. Calcium. Calcium is pretty cool. Calcium helps settle your nervous system and create like an inner calm. It has this pathway in cells that causes them to calm down. Calcium is also best absorbed after 8 p.m. And it's better to not take, and I'm not really sure I remember why. I'm trying to recall, but it's better to not take calcium and magnesium together. So I would like alternate evenings. I would do magnesium one night, calcium the other night, or if you take them at separate times in the latter part of the day, just take the magnesium closer to bed. So you could do like calcium at 5 p.m. and then magnesium at like 9 p.m. Something like that. Again, I can't for the life of me remember why you want to not, or like why it's better to not take them together. Maybe something about them, like their chemical reactions, like causing the other one to not be as effective or something. I feel like it's something around that. You're not going to die or anything, but like the efficacy of them isn't as high. So I prefer to look for calcium citrate. There is calcium lactate, which is fine if somebody doesn't have like an issue with milk, but majority of people have lactose intolerances. So I'd rather just do citrate, but it can cause sensitivities if they have it. And the recommended amount there is usually 750 to 1,000 mgs per day to help with the adrenal function. Cool. All right. Supplementation. Wow, dude, we're actually almost done with this presentation. That's nice. I was sped through that faster than I wanted to because I was a little anxious. Anyways, so I wouldn't necessarily consider fiber a supplement. It was just something that I kind of like rethought about during this process. I mean, you can supplement with fiber, but during adrenal fatigue, mild constipation is sometimes present. So fiber is going to help with bowels, but it also helps strengthen the adrenal function just by having higher levels of fiber in your body. Now, we know that too high of fiber can further the digestive issues. So we just want to make sure that our clients are always having that healthy sweet spot balance of fiber intake. It's always going to help. Fiber's amazing for you. So we always want to make sure we're having a constant flow of it. Licorice root, that should actually say licorice root extract. Like you're not going to go eat like a red licorice and be good here. So it's a licorice root extract. Something to be weary of with this, and this is why I personally don't use it, but it's recognized as a anti-stress herb, increasing energy, endurance, and vitality. It does partially block the conversion of cortisol to cortisone, which can potentially cause higher circulating levels of cortisol. So that's just something to note. Not saying it's going to, but it could, because remember, cortisone is inactive cortisol. So cortisol, who's in the system, is trying to convert it and then hold over here and be inactive. But also, if we have really, really high cortisone, which is inactive cortisol, that can sometimes trickle over and see cortisol higher. That's a whole other video, but just again, something to note of why I personally don't use licorice root extract if we're going to be treating adrenal fatigue. Other things that I would use in place of that, ashwagandha, Korean ginseng root, or just ginger root. All of those are very quality stress lowering abilities. They're, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess anti-inflammatory, for lack of a better, I'm kind of in brain fart on it right now of what I was about to say they were, but yeah, so that's what I would kind of use. Licorice root extract's fine. It's just not something that I personally use. This is the last slide. Holy shit. How about that? I did not think I was going to get through it that fast. So at the end of the day, like all things, this requires a multifactorial approach. The client lifestyle, severity of symptoms, and response to initial protocols should help pave the path for what directions fully needed to go for recovery. The main thing to focus on is the overall lifestyle change of the client and replacing old habits with new ones to better set them up for a better optimized and functioning system. Any questions? How was that presentation? Man, I can't believe I got through freaking 28 slides in 50 minutes. That's impressive, even for me. Any comments, questions, thoughts? Do you guys have any clients that you're like, ooh, I feel like this person might have adrenal fatigue?
So I have one. She got a nose surgery like a month or two ago, but she's also just started grad school. So she's like extremely just stressed at all times. But she also has like the physical stress from her body and her recovery. So I'm trying to think like what supplements would be good for her specifically.
Well, you gotta, in order to know that first, we're gonna have to go through all the symptoms and see what she's experiencing, because just because she's stressed doesn't necessarily mean that the adrenals are at a fatigued level.
Okay.
So typically, actually, I'm gonna let another one of the coaches take this on. I'm gonna let Delana take this one on. So if you have a client who is just experiencing new levels of stress throughout their day-to-day, so let's say they start grad school, what are some things that we can do to help manage, lower, or minimize stress first before going full-blown protocol for, say, adrenal fatigue?
Make sure that they're sleeping during like optimal sleep time. So going to bed, like to match your REM cycles, going to bed around like 10 to 11 and then waking up between like 6 and 8. Potentially like pulling down training, whether that be days or amounts. Even just like the things you're talking about too with like eating. I find that a lot of times if we can focus on proper like nutrient absorption while we're eating our meals, that goes a long way, because if you're not digesting the food that you're eating, you're not able to actually use it. So trying to do like little tweaks, like eating food slower, not drinking a lot of water on meals, or just having higher quality food sources, that can all play into it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Anybody else want to piggyback off of that for other things that you can add to help somebody mitigate stress?
Well, I've kind of noticed like with my clients, I have a few clients who similar, like in grad school, they're like stress cases all the time. And 9 times out of 10, they just don't have like a schedule, like a structured schedule. It's like such a simple thing, but I see it like with so many of my clients, they just like don't have a schedule. And like I'll literally tell them like, email me exactly what you're doing from like 8 a.m. to the time you go to bed or whatever. And then they're like, oh, my stress levels went down. I'm like, yeah, because now you know what you're doing. So I don't know, just even having a schedule is pretty helpful.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really solid one that I didn't even think about. Right. Kind of goes back in like the helplessness thing. Like they just feel helpless. So like my schedule's so crazy. You're like, write it down. And they're like, oh man, it's not that crazy. Interesting. That's a good one, Kenny. Anybody else? I'll call on somebody.
Kind of to go off like what she was saying is like I already so I addressed like what Delana said, like the sleep schedule and like just overall how like her eating times and her sleeping time. So I had her get up an hour extra earlier, so that way she had an hour before she had to do any work. So like before, because she said she would wake up at like 8:30 and have to be out of the door like by 9. I was like, wake up at like 7:30, that we have an hour, no phone, nothing to really focus on, just kind of your own routine. And then again, same thing, go to bed at 10. So same thing, like kind of with the sleep schedule. So so yeah, what they were saying is pretty true.
Yeah, sweet. So I would start there, man. Like for real, I would start there. Horizontal rests are amazing. Do not sleep on horizontal breaks for your clients. Dude, go lay down for 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, that was another question I had. So when you said laying down is better than sitting down, is there like a reason for it? Just because I have a lot of clients too, like I'll tell them something, they're like, oh, like why? So kind of just something to
yeah.
to
So
tell them.
I mean, the best way that makes sense to me when I read the data is just, I mean, it's a full body relaxation. You know, like think about this, like try to fall asleep while you're sitting up, and then try to fall asleep while you're laying down.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know, like
Okay, and also like your lower back isn't being used either if you're laying down.
yeah,
sitting up.
so, like
Okay.
when you're laying down, you're full, like gravity is not pushing on you in any way, shape, or form. There's no physiological response to a stimulus, because posture is your body's physiological response to gravity. So your body's always trying to find some way, shape, or form to respond to gravity. That's why people hunch, their necks go forward, anything like this. Your posture is just your body's response to gravity. So if you can lay down, there's no physiological response needed. So you don't have that stimulus happening as well, which allows you to relax more.
Gotcha.
Also, laying down is just fucking great.
Is blood flow increased like when you're laying down compared to sitting up?
That I actually don't know. Let me see if I can do a very quick Google search real quick and answer it, because that is an interesting question.
I thought I read that laying down with your feet either like completely upright against a wall or just elevated at all can really help to promote circulation and just overall body relaxation as well.
I do agree with that one, especially in the lower body. When you lie down, you eliminate that increased venous pressure. When lying down, fluid more readily flows from your tissues back into the veins. The large volume of blood that accumulated in your legs also shifts to your chest and expands the right atrium, which blood from veins accumulates. So it looks like laying down fucking slaps for blood flow, dude. Now we have the answer. Great work, guys. Cool. Anybody else have any questions, comments, interpretations of the data, or something that they want to share with another client that's, you know, potentially a stress case? All right, my lovely students, you guys are the best. You guys have, dude, okay, wait, actually, let me sign it off, Coaching Collective. Let me stop recording.